Alright, so we are going to now bezel the 12mm with the band. And a few things you want to think about when you're doing this is you want to think about making sure both sides of the bands look the same. So what you want to do is, there we go, make sure when you line them up, you have, like, for example, I started off with the gold, so I want to make sure the gold is on both sides. So when I do this, you also want to keep in mind, whoops, what direction your thread is going. So right now my thread is going towards the Tila. So for my first connection, I'm going to go outwards. And when I do the connection, a couple of things to note is that because we do have an uneven number for our second round of Delicas, because there's 30 we initially put on, so then it gets divided into 15. In this particular case, let me just get a little closer. On one side, we'll be making the connections on the center, and on the other side, we'll have to make a connection. I like to do the bottom of the two versus the top. So just keep that in mind, because we want it to be directly across from one another. And in this particular case, because our first round was 30, and then when we added on beads, it divide that into half. So that means it's 15, so it's an uneven number. And that's the reason why. It doesn't always work out that way. So if you end up with an even number, you're lucky. So let's go ahead to make our lives easier. And we just gotta remember, so we're going towards the Tila. We're gonna move away from the Tila when we make our connection. So I'm gonna go ahead, select a bead, or Delica. And here we go. I'm just gonna pull my thread through, make that connection, and then go towards the Tila when I make the connection on the right angle weave. And when you're starting off with the right angle weave, you want to make sure you're at that top. So before you get started. There we go. And do this about 3 to 4 times. I would reinforce. And you know, you want to give it a little tug. You don't want things to be too tight, but you don't want it to be loosey-goosey. You do want to treat it like a band though, kind of like a watch band. There we go. Now, because I am facing towards the Tila, I can go ahead and add these beads. Otherwise, if you're facing outwards, you can do this later. So what I'm going to do, since I'm facing towards the Tila, is I'm going to do my little connection embellishment right there. But in this case, we're going to just pick up 1 11/0, 1 3mm fire polish, and 1 11/0. And then go through to the other side. There we go. There we go. Of the right angle weave for the other connection before we make our connection. And sometimes that works out, sometimes you have to do it later. All right, and to figure out where we want to go through, we're coming out here. For our one connection is right here, so we're skipping one, and then we're going through the third one. And since we're pointing outward now, away from the Tila, we're going to be pointing inward for that connection. It's always the opposite on the other side. So go ahead and then just reinforce that. There we go. 3 to 4 times. And we do that because it's a stress point for the project. Now what I'm going to do is I want to go through this section one more time. So since I'm facing away from it, I'm just going to go through my project, follow the current thread path, and reinforce that. And make sure you go through all the beads. And if you're not 100% positive, turn your project around and double check. Otherwise, just go through 1 or 2 beads at a time. Don't rush this project. There we go. And now we can go ahead and reinforce that. I'm just going to pull that out just a little bit. There we go. Yep, so I'm just going to go through a couple at a time so I don't miss any beads. There we go. All right, now we're going to attach the other side. And then after that, we'll get started on our embellishments. Meet you back here in a moment. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to attach the other side. So we want to make sure we're on the opposite side. Best way to do that is just take your needle, find the center, and go right across. So on this side, our center is in a very center spine one. And on this side, our center beads are the 2 that are next to each other. We are going to be attaching our band on this side on the bottom. And so we are going to be right, let me just get another needle and I can point out to you. So we're going to be right here because we'll skip this one and go right here. Now I'm on this side of the band, so let's see here. So I'll be skipping, let's see here, I'm right here. Here's my center. I'll skip this one and then I'll go down to here. And since I'm pointing in towards my Tila bead, you want to make sure you're the correct spot to start off with. You want to make sure you're at the top, at the very beginning of that right angle weave. Since I'm pointing inwards, I'm going to be going outwards with my thread. And I'm going to choose to go through the bottom. I just think it lies when you can't do it, exactly the same on the other side. I just think it lies a little bit better if you do center and lower. There we go. So let me go back and do that. So let's see here. So I'm right here. That's my center. I want to go through right here. Now I can move this out of my way. There we go. Go through towards the Tila on the band at the very beginning of the right angle weave. There we go. Just hold things in place. You don't want things too tight, but you do want them. You want to give it a little tug so things sit properly. All right, and then reinforce 3 to 4 times again. All right. And since our thread is pointing towards the Tila, we can go ahead and do our embellishment for the connection. So pick up one 11/0, one 3mm, one 11/0, go through the other connection where we're going to be making on the other side on the right angle weave, so the very beginning. All right, now we have to figure out where we're going to be connecting. So let's be conscientious of this. So we're going away from the Tila. So when we make our connection, we want to go towards the Tila. Well, let's see here. So we'll skip this center, P1, and then we want to connect towards the bottom. So we want to go right here. So just skip the two pairs, because I'm not counting the very spine. So you want to be right here. Pull in. So I just turn things around so I'm right here. There we go, move things out of the way. I know it's hard to see there. So here's the top of my right angle weave. Here is my connection point. And I'm just going to reinforce that 3 to 4 times. Alright, let's go ahead and just do that one more time to be on the safe side, because it is a stress point. And then we know it's taken care of. We don't have to worry about it. Alright, so now what I want to do is I want to reinforce this section here. So I'm just going to follow my thread path. I got to go through here again, finish up that connection. So I'm not on the bezel. And then I'm just going to follow the thread path to get over there. And since I'll probably end up having to go through the Tila just to do that, since I was pointing away from the Tila initially. And again, you can go through a couple of beads at a time, but if you do decide to go through all of them, I do recommend that you double check and make sure that you didn't skip any beads. Why do I say that? Because I do that all the time. I just don't want you to make my mistakes. You're going to be a better beader than I am. I assure you on that. Isn't that the goal? Always make someone better than you when you train them? There we go. All right. And I'm just going to go through a couple at a time because I know on this I'm going to mess up. So I'm just going through a couple at a time. And then we'll get started on the fun stuff, the embellishment. But the nice thing is now that we have our bands connected to our bezel, it's going to be so much easier for everybody to figure out how long they want their bracelet to be. So I'll meet you back here and we'll get started on the embellishment. Okay. So now that we've got our band on, connected to our Rivoli, our bezel Rivoli, we are ready to go ahead and start the embellishment. Before we do, you may want to just check the size of your bracelet. See if it's as long as you want. Keep in mind we are going to be adding on a clasp. And for those of you take in consideration whether or not you're going to be adding a jump ring and or split ring, and you want to give just a little space because at the very end of the bracelet we'll be adding on this little bit here. So that's about I would say approximately 1/4 of an inch. So depending on the size of your clasp and or jump ring or split ring, you want to take that in consideration when you're measuring your bracelet. And if you need to add on any Tilas, you can go ahead and do so at the end. And then we can always remeasure once we have most of the embellishment on. We can take a look at it and see if we need to add on as well. But now's a good time to go ahead and do that. This bracelet does lay fairly flat, so go ahead, do that, and then meet us back here and we'll get started on the embellishment. Alright, so for the embellishment, first, what we want to do is we're going to be putting our embellishment between the two Tila beads. And right now I am coming out of this seed bead. So I'm going to follow the natural thread path and get to in between this Tila and this Delica. So I'm coming in between. There we go. I'm picking up one 11/0 round, one fire polish, and then one 11/0 round. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this Delica and then the top seed bead there. Alright, so now what I want to do is, because we're going to create a little X, I want to get my thread between this Delica and this Tila again. So I'm going to follow the thread path. There we go. I'm going to pick up one 11/0, go through the fire polish, pick up another 11/0, and then I'm going to go, so we're creating an X, I'm going to go in between this Tila bead and this Delica. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and reinforce that by following the thread path. Just by making that X again. gonna go ahead. Now I'm coming through this Tila bead and I'm just gonna go underneath, catch all of the beads, and we'll just reinforce this Tila bead while we're at it. There we go. And then we're going to go through this Tila bead and go through the 11-0, the Tila bead, and the Delica and the 11-0. So we're doing two things. We're doing our first embellishment and we're reinforcing our Tila beads. The reason why we didn't do that right away is we didn't want to get so much thread prior to doing our embellishment. So we're going to keep going. I'm running out of thread here, so I'll be adding on soon enough. So again, now I'm going to do my next embellishment. It's going to be between this Tila bead and this Tila bead. Alright, so let's do a couple more embellishments and then I will leave you on your own to finish up the embellishment on this side and on this side. So let's go ahead. Let's see here. There we go. Alright. So I'm coming out of this bead here. My next embellishment will be going in between two of these Tila. So I'm going to go ahead and maneuver. So it'll be going between this Delica and this Tila. Picking up a 11-0, a fire polish, and a 11-0. Going through the Delica and the C bead on the other side, because it'll be the first leg of my X. There we go. And now I want to move over to here, so I'm going to follow the thread path. And it's important that you don't create a new thread path while doing this. There we go. So now my needle's coming through between the Delica and the Tila. I'm going to pick up a 11-0. Go through the fire polish. There we go. Pick up another 11-0 and then go through in between the Delica in front of this Tila bead and 11-0. We're going to go ahead, reinforce that embellishment, and then we'll reinforce the Tila beads. So I'm going to follow the thread path that I created for this embellishment. Doing a couple of beads at a time will prevent you from missing a bead. Now that, let's see here, did I? Nope, now we gotta reinforce the other side. Oops. All right, now I'm just going to reinforce my strength between the two Tila beads and then move forward. So instead of going through the embellishment, I'm going to go through the Tila bead, and I want to make sure that I don't skip the Tila bead. Here we go. And check both sides. Make sure you're not missing any of the beads that you need to. We're just reinforcing this Tila bead connection. And then I'll do the other, and then we'll move forward to where our next embellishment is supposed to be. And again, you don't want to do things too tight. And that's the thing that I've got to make sure that I myself don't do. There we go. I think I went to... I think I went back further than I needed to. That's okay. Doesn't hurt to have a little extra reinforcement. Again, I'm just going to check the back, make sure I didn't miss any beads. Nope. And then go ahead and go through. It doesn't hurt. I mean, it's better to be safe than sorry. And there we go. And then I'll get in place for my next embellishment. There we go. Alright, so now I'm ready for my next embellishment, which will be between these two Tila beads. So I'm going to let you do this, finish up on your own. Now remember, you're going to go to all the way to here for your embellishment. So between the last two Tila beads that you have on your bracelet is where your last embellishment should be on both sides. So your last one on this one would be between these two Tila beads, depending on how long you have your length of your band. So once you've done both sides, come back. We will then be adding our clasp and jump rings or split rings, and from there we'll be putting on the final piece of embellishment. So meet me back here once you have all that done, and we'll do that. All right, so make sure your thread, before we add our clasp and our beads for that, is coming out of the top of one of these two right angle weaves. Okay, and the thread is facing towards the Tila. So if my thread was on this side, it would be facing this direction. All right, so after that, pick up 6 11/0 round seed beads, then put on your clasp, and I already have my jump ring my split ring already attached. If you're using a jump ring, go ahead and attach your jump ring. Now this particular clasp, I didn't need to do that. And that's because I got a closed circle. The reason why I like to do that, and this is something you may want to keep in mind, is when it comes to making bracelets and necklaces, if you make your bracelet or necklace too long, it is so much harder, and sometimes you just have to start all the way completely over by making it all over again. If it's slightly too short, it is easier to lengthen the necklace or the bracelet. And it's even more easier if you have your clasp attached to a jump ring or a split ring. Just something to keep in mind. It depends on who you're making it for. It's about preference, those sort of things. But I do like to make gifts, so it's just some things to keep in mind. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna thread through the split ring. Then I'm gonna go through the opposite right angle weave. I'm gonna follow my current thread path and go through that last Tila unit. Make sure you go through all the beads, you're not missing anything. There we go. Now we're going to go ahead and reinforce. So we're still going through the right angle weave that was there previously. It gets a little harder because of the magnet. All right, so I'm sticking out of the right angle weave that was there previously. First, I'm going to pick up 11mm Delica, go through 3 of the 11mm round seed beads that I just added. Keeping my clasp to the other side. There we go. I'm going to add one more 11mm Delica. Go through 3 of the 11mm that I added. Make sure my clasp did not get caught in the thread anywhere. Before I enter in the other side of the right angle unit, I'm going to pick up one more 11mm Delica. Follow my thread path for the right angle weave. So that Delica is actually going to sit right before the right angle weave. And then I'm going to go through and just reinforce all those beads again by following the thread path. And when you do so, just be mindful of going through all the beads. There we go. And I would do that a total of, let's see here, 2 to 3 more times at least. Just because this is going to be considered a stress point. And when I'm going through the right angle weave, I still follow those rules about going one bead at a time. So I want to try to keep as much of the shape as possible. And this will be the last time I go through here. And since my thread here is starting to get short, I am going to go ahead and do a knot, and I'll do the knot right before I go into that Delica, just because it's a little bit bigger hole. And when I did that, I made sure that I didn't grab the thread that was there on our first round. I made sure that was not part of my knot. You don't, and the reason why I like doing this, it creates a little bit of a shape, and it just gives it a little bit more oomph, especially with having both the 11mm rounds and the 11mm Delicas. It adds texture to your piece, and it brings it more to life, is my personal thought process behind that. And my thread is getting super short here. All right. And I want to keep the integrity of that right angle weave, so I'm going to go through the seed beads one at a time, even though, there we go. Go through that Tila one more time. And then I'm just going to burn off the thread. All right. I'll meet you back here. I'm going to add some thread. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. I'm gonna add some thread, and we're gonna put on the last bit of the embellishment. And by the way, you do the same thing on the opposite side. All right, so I've added thread, so we're back, and now we're gonna put on the finishing touches on the embellishment, the last bit. So my thread is currently coming out right here from the right angle weave. There we go. And here's part of the next right angle weave. And all we're going to do is we're going to take some 11mm Delicas. Pick up one 11mm Delica. Thread through the next one. So the part of the right angle weave that's sticking out on the side, we're just going to be adding 11mm Delicas. And that will just give it some more shape and texture because of the difference in colors and shapes. So go all the way down, and I'll show you how to cross over, and we'll do all the way up, and then you just have to go through and reinforce, and then do your knots and finish up. So we're almost done, you guys. All right, I'm putting on my last 11mm Delica on this side of the band. Then I'm just gonna go through and reinforce this part of the band that we put on earlier. There we go. All right, so you thread your needle until you go to, and you're through that first right angle weave where the side is sticking out. So now I have my thread through there, and I got the next sticking out from the right angle weave, and I'm just going to go ahead and bead through there, and then go all the way up, and you're done with this side, and then you do the exact same thing on the other side. So, quick thing to mention is make sure you go around at least a second time for reinforcement. You don't have to. This embellishment isn't going to get a lot of stress on it, but it doesn't hurt, and as long as you're able to move through